am so grateful for our liturgy teaching moment to introduce one of the experts and faithful amongst us, our dear Penny Johnson, to speak about movement and liturgical movement and liturgy in, I don't know, she's going to use better words than I am. Movement in prayer, that's what I'm trying to say, and our liturgical exploration. I've got it for you.
Well, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Penny.
My pleasure. We are involved in this very important work of trying things out, of experimenting, of reaching out and saying, well, there might be another way to do this. Let's see what that's like. And what struck me was how much we were part of a long tradition of this going on. And I thought it might be interesting to just take two little examples that can be seen as part of continuums that we have played our part in and are still playing our part in. So, for instance, if you lived in the Roman Empire, in the early Roman Empire, you were someone who knew what the emperor meant. You probably had never seen him, or certainly never talked to him, but you knew that all power and authority was vested in him. So if this new God who's coming along and everyone's talking about and you're interested in is being compared to the emperor, we expect him to do things like the emperor. When the Roman legions came back triumphantly from a military expedition, they would come to Rome and have a grand triumphant entry. And there are these wonderful arches that in stone that commemorate what this was like. And the procession, for those who've seen it, you remember perhaps, it's always led by the emperor on a horse, very grand and glorious, is at the front of the procession. And behind him comes the army, and then behind that come the poor, pathetic people who've been enslaved. The slaves, the now unhoused, the losers are at the back. So what does the Christian church do? It looks at this and says, probably unconsciously, we're going to copy this in some ways, but we know that the most important person is not the slaves who have given themselves to Christ. It is, in fact, the Lord himself. So how are we going to have the Lord march at the front of a parade? I mean, he's not here with us in body right now. So it's got to be a model, a sign, a symbol, and that is, of course, the crucifix. So the crucifix gets carried in the front of the procession. The glory of the Lord is going in front of us, and at the back come all of us, the ordinary people. The sense that this is how it worked is borne out sometimes by the physicality of objects around us. If you don't know it and have never been there, you must go to the Smith Art Gallery, which is right next door. And in the Smith Art Gallery is how would I put it? A symbol that has come across the centuries to us to learn something. It's a beautiful medieval cross. It's not very big. It's very gorgeously painted. And it's painted on one side? No, on two sides. So we know that this was not a cross that was put up against a pillar or an altar on which you didn't have to cover and color the back, just the front. But this is to be seen on both sides, so it's got to be a processional cross, which supports the argument that this was perhaps a pattern that the early church is picking up. Do go over there someday and look at it. It's my favorite object in the Smith collection, which has beautiful things. And you can always ask Barbara Kellum about them. Because she knows what I don't know for sure. So then we have the question of how are we going to arrange our bodies as we pray? And one of the things we know is that a position known as the orans position was commonly used. And orans is like this. Your arms are bent and up, and your head and hands are just tipped back a little to open you to God's hand and voice and will for you. And orans, we know, is very ancient. We know it's being used by Christians because little paintings of people in the orans position are found in the catacombs in Rome, which is just sends a tickle right up the back of your neck when you look at something like this and think how old it is and it's still there. And one of the things you should see when you go to Rome. So is that the position that stays the only position? No, it doesn't. And in the early days of the Roman Empire, everything was under control. But as the Roman Empire little by little came apart at the seams, it became taken over in many cases by barbarians, as they were known, by people who were warriors. And warrior culture was what mattered to them. So if I want to show that I am in supplication to a great lord or to a great warrior, or that I'm giving up my weapons and I won't fight him, I will go to him and fall on my knees in front of him and raise my hands. Because if I raise my hands like this, what happens to your hands? What can you do to my hands? You can take them in yours. And can I get my sword out to attack her? No. So I have become the creature who is held and controlled by my Lord. And this becomes one of the patterns for us to kneel and put our hands in the hands of the Lord. So these are just two little examples for which there's a modicum of historical material to actually prove anything, but that suggest something about the living, changing ways in which the church was evolving a new liturgy that spoke to people from time to time and day to day. Thank you very much.